Welcome, John Longley from CCB's Consumer Protection Division. Can you give us your official title and tell us what you do at CCB?
Uh, Again, my name is John Longley. I'm the Vice President of Fraud uh, for CCB Community Bank. In a nutshell, my role at the bank is to help consumers navigate, preferably before they're scammed and have suffered any financial loss. But on the back end, once they have, help them navigate through the process of securing their identity, what information was compromised. Believe it or not, the lower the sophistication of the scam are the most prevalent. Counterfeit checks. People have heard the term phishing with a PH, smishing. These are campaigns where you receive an email, respond to a survey, and get something free. Or we've all seen recently the toll violation text messages. Whereby you click on a link in the text message, you get in touch with somebody for a toll that you seemingly didn't pay. The phishing operations are typically, they come to you in the form of an email. Some are in the form of perform a survey and get a free product. It can be from any kind of national retailer, the large big box. I hate to use any specific names because it's not specific to one particular retailer, but you might get something from Lowe's or Walmart. The important thing is to click and see where the email is actually from. It's not coming from Walmart. You'll see that there's a third-party person sitting there. And key thing to remember is if something's free, you're the product. They're trying to gather data on you and who are those people selling the data to. But that's where a lot of the scams are initiated from, is consumers themselves actually responding to those type messages and opening the door for the scammers to contact them.
So, what happens in the process after somebody clicks on an email or clicks on a link in a text message, or even pulls in the counterfeit check and tries to cash it or what have you? Where does CCB enter the equation as a defense mechanism?
Typically, we see it when the consumer comes in with the check. They have already been involved with the scammer to some extent. They've clicked on that link. The link generally has some form of malware. It installs on their device, which gives the scammers more access to the device that they're clicking the link from, whether it be your phone or your computer at home. They've engaged with the consumer at some level of whatever the scam operation is, whether it be a work from home opportunity, mystery shopper. They've engaged with the consumer at that point, and then they instruct them that we're going to send you a check, deposit that check into your account, buy gift cards, cash app the money to us. Keep a small percentage for yourself for your work and time and effort, which to the consumer makes some sense. I'm doing some work for these people that have negotiated with me online. $300, they're going to send me a $3,000 check. I have to go buy $2,500 in gift cards to mystery shop. And the check then returns a few days later, counterfeit. Our tellers are all trained. Bankers are all trained to pretty much identify counterfeit checks. So it's really kind of important for the consumer too, when they get a check, to come in and we ask questions specifically. What did you receive this check for? Typically where we're engaged is on the back end of the scam once the loss has occurred, unfortunately. But we do a pretty good job of catching them on the front end too. So I'd say 50-50. But we do see on average, 5 to 10 counterfeit checks a week, generally either through the ATM deposits, mobile deposits, or in the branch.
Where are these guys coming from? I mean, are these because when I was a kid, we talked about the Nigerian princes all the time. That was kind of like, the Nigerian prince got you sort of thing.
Right.
But are these people local? Are these people like the other place I always hear about is like India or like Bangladesh or something like that? Are they overseas or are they here like in our neighborhoods?
It's really hard to tell. Online crime statistics from the FBI last year in 2024 say it's about a $16.5 billion industry. Now, that's not just counterfeit checks, that's scams in general. And they originate from everywhere: Balkan states, Russia, India, the Philippines. But it's domestic in the U.S. as well. It's not hard for criminals to pick the mail, get checks. They're just like we're trained to identify checks. Criminals are trained on how to identify which sort of envelopes going through the mail have business checks in them. And we'll take them out, and these are a little more complex to identify, but they do what's called washing the checks, where they use chemical compounds to wash out the ink, who the check's made payable to. They change it to the person that they're trying to scam, send them the check, and it will pass a lot more of the security features than, say, a typical counterfeit check that's just produced through Adobe software. That's the big challenge we have with counterfeit checks nowadays, is the software to produce these things is so good that it makes it a lot more difficult to identify. It boils down to what's the business purpose of the check.
Came into my mind when you were talking about this was like Catch-22, where he's like countering checks and like getting uniforms and like doing all this kind of crazy, like almost spy kind of stuff to get the check in and get the cash, or cash his like airline check or whatever. And it almost sounds to me like it's not necessarily all overseas, all electronic, but a lot of it is. And then there's another component of it that's like a physical component. Somebody's doing something physically underhanded to, like, in the community to do stuff. Is that kind of the rub, or is it mostly unknowable?
I mean, it is really tough to say. I mean, there are local rings. I know I read, obviously, a lot of news events that happen. I know they've busted some postal theft rings. I'm actually working on a case right now that involves the possibility of theft of some checks. So there's the local aspect of it. You mentioned the movie there. I can't remember that guy's name, Frank something or other. Abagnale,
Yeah.
Frank Abagnale, which is a good story as far as, or has some good factual things about identifying counterfeit checks in it, where he does the kind of spy analyzation of the check for the agent. Some of that's very true. It's some of the things that our tellers are trained on. It's just really tough to say where these originate from. Obviously, a lot of the phishing and smishing emails, smishing is the text messages, phishing is the emails. Those originate generally overseas.
Okay.
And when it says there's a problem with your PayPal account, PayPal is going to draft your account. Call this number to stop it now. The last thing you want to do is pick up the phone and call that number in the email. You're talking to the scammers, and you're generally talking to somebody in a call center in India or the Philippines. Sometimes you can even hear
Other people
talking in the background. I've actually even heard like chickens in the background because they're working out of a call center that's an open air sweatshop in the Philippines. And, so
it's vertical integration, right? Like, you got to have the chicken game, but you also have to have the international financial crimes.
Yes.
It's a corporate kind of way to do things.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And since we mentioned a movie that has some good, despite the Hollywood glorification of things, but has some good factual information in it. There was a reason, The Beekeeper, with Jason Statham in it, despite all the action and things like that after the fact. But the first few minutes of that, where they actually show the woman getting scammed with the computer screen popping up that there's a problem with her computer and to call the number, is actually very, very good representation of how a lot of these scams happen.
So the Catch-22 movie with Leo DiCaprio, or The Beekeeper, what are your like top movies where you're like, this is actually how it happens?
Yeah, those two are right there. The Catch-22, Catch Me If You Can, I think.
Catch Me If You Can. There it is.
With him is a very good representation of how the counterfeit check operation works from the criminal's perspective, of him actually washing checks, creating checks, and going into the bank and trying to run the scam. We don't see the scammers doing that aspect of it so much. What we see is more of, they've produced the counterfeit check. They're running the online operation of mystery shopper. Vehicle wraps is another one we see. Hey, we'll pay you to get your vehicle wrapped in some brand thing, and they send our customer the check, or a consumer the check, and instruct them to go to the bank and, okay, here's the operation. You go and you cash the check. You're going to send $2,000 of this $3,000 check to this individual. You're going to buy this and ship it here. Keep $500 for yourself, and then someone's going to get in touch with you to come and wrap your vehicle. That's the end we see of it, more as the victim, the consumer that has engaged with the scammers and is falling prey to the scam. Unfortunately, they tend to prey on the elderly or more just trusting of strangers and less knowledgeable about the technology, or the lower income who are maybe a little bit more desperate, for a financial leg up and, the chance to make a few extra $100 to pay the electric bill this month sounds like a good opportunity. What do you need me to do? So unfortunately, like I said, I think the statistics last year were like $16.5 billion. I have a feeling that's probably underreported because a lot of people fall prey to the, embarrassment, the vanity of, oh my gosh, I got scammed. I can't believe it.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just, pay
Pretend
the money back to the bank and pretend it, or pretend it didn't happen. I just take the loss. So it's probably much more than that, but where it's originating from, there's no telling. I mean, they get a FedEx envelope that's addressed from Las Vegas, Nevada. The letter inside of it has an address from New York. The check itself is from a bank out of Utah. None of it makes any sense, but to a person who's, again, more trusting of anything, or just they think, well, the world operates that way. Now it's all international businesses everywhere. It makes sense to them that this simple thing like a check is so well traveled for all these different businesses. And that's some of the things we look out for when they come in with a FedEx envelope and they're tearing the check off of the letter, and you see that the FedEx envelope is from one place and the bank is in another place. That's all indicative of counterfeit check operation.
John, you were in the military, and that's a piece of information about you, right? Just like my first name is Christopher, right? And scammers can kind of put these pieces of information about you together to make something more compelling. Is that kind of the case with some of these scams that you're seeing?
Yeah, absolutely. There's companies out there that their sole job is you are the product. Your data is what they're selling. Who are they selling it to? So keep your online presence as protected as possible. Even things like Facebook. I mean, I've read before that, your profile on Facebook is monetized by Facebook. Mm-hmm. It's worth, I think I read one time, it's roughly worth about $15 to $16 a month to Facebook. What is Facebook doing with your information? Social media, they all operate the same way. They're aggregating your data, and that data is sold. So every time you watch an ad, they know that Chris or John watched this ad. And
we watched it for 16 seconds, and therefore we watch it more than somebody else. We should serve other ads like that.
Exactly.
As well.
And that's why you start seeing trends of advertisements on your Facebook. But to the point of how that information gets compromised is, again, we've all heard of the dark web. The dark web is just a internet marketplace for bad guys, if you want to think of it that way.
Walmart for bad guys online.
Absolutely. Several years ago, there was a company called Silk Road that was busted, and they were selling anything and everything, drugs, anything, but more importantly, people's data. Mm-hmm. It's quite shocking to know how much of your data is physically out there on the internet without you ever even realizing that you put it there, by simply responding to surveys from your email, signing up for members benefits or reward benefits at retailers and things like that. And this isn't a knock against the retailers. Most of them do a very good job of protecting their information, but I've gotten them. You've probably gotten them before in the mail that you heard about some company that you don't ever recall doing business with had a data breach, and your information may have been compromised, and they have to offer you the year of identity protection and things like that. That's generally a lot of times these third-party people, these data aggregators that then sell their information online or get hacked. So your consumer information, your personal information is just scattered anywhere and everywhere, all online. And then to even make matters worse is the technology's to a point now where even if they only have partial information, they have numbers programs that just generate numbers. Millions of numbers in a second, and can piece together the rest of the puzzle. So maybe they only have the last four of your social, but they run one of these number programs and get the rest of it, and then get a positive hit on it. Now they have your name, your date of birth, your social security number, all of those things that we're told to protect with, under lock and key.
I love what you said about how if you are not purchasing a product, you are a product. Mm-hmm. What other kind of maxims should people remember when they're doing business online or in person with people that they just don't know? What other things can they do to keep them as safe as possible?
Um, Again, just keep all of your personal information close to the vest. Online loans is a big thing right now, and people are far too trusting of technology and Google, uh, just to name one of them. But they'll go in there and they'll search online loans on Google. Well, I assure you, about the first 10 or 15 results that you get on Google, a lot of those are scams. Um, so when you pick up the phone and call them, just be cautious with who you're talking to up front. My suggestion is always go specifically, do your research and find the companies that are doing it and go specifically to their websites. Only ever enter your information on a secure pay site if you're ordering something online, or if it's say like your doctor's office.
Mm-hmm.
You call your doctor's office and, hey, I need to pay my copay before the appointment. Bonnie sitting behind the desk at the doctor's office probably is not an international scammer. You can probably give her your debit card information to run your copay. On the other hand, I'm a big proponent of never let your debit card leave your possession, leave your line of sight. And use a credit card or pay in cash, restaurants and things like that. To me, never let that debit card leave your line of sight. We do see, and now that's a local thing we see quite often that doesn't really fall under the category of online scams, is it takes literally a second with your phone now to snap a picture front and back of someone's debit card. A week later, they go shopping online and you have a bunch of charges on your account that you never authorized. Now, we do have protections at the bank for that, things like that. But just never let your debit card leave your line of sight.
I hear all the time these people like not necessarily LifeLock, but the VPNs and the all the stuff that we're getting pushed on podcasts right now that are supposed to like protect your internet presence. Are those things worth it? Are they a good investment?
For heavy users, absolutely. Even for just everyday mom and pop, a VPN is a pretty suitable protection for most transactions, or for most people. The key is like I mentioned earlier, most of the people unwittingly open the door for the scammers.
Yeah.
So even if they're on a VPN and they do manage to crack the VPN and get into your screen, for example, with the pop-up Microsoft, there's a problem with your computer, you need to call this number so we can help resolve it. That's still going to get in on a VPN because the consumer themselves actually probably clicked on something they didn't realize was opening that door to let it in. So the VPN is not going to do much to protect them. So the VPN is going to be more for the savvy users that understand how the threats are getting in. But any protection you can provide yourself. I mean, identity, LifeLock is a name brand of one, but there's other identity theft protection companies out there are good at doing what they say they do. They will alert you that the data is compromised, but it doesn't prevent the data from being compromised. The data is out there. The sad reality of it is all of our data is already out there in some way, shape, or form.
Kind of like the plastic in the ocean kind of thing. There's already plastic in the ocean. Our stuff's already out in the internet kind of stuff.
It's there. And it comes from multiple reasons. Though, again, like I said earlier, the companies that buy and sell and trade, and that's their commodity, and through consumers unwittingly putting it out there on platforms that they probably really shouldn't have. I mean, always use a secure pay site. If you can tokenize your card.
And what's that?
Tokenization is a process in which it almost encrypts your debit card information for use, particularly like online, or if you're using, tap to pay with your phone or anything like that. It creates it's almost like an anonymous sequence of numbers that's one specific to your card, but also specific to that transaction. So the next transaction will look like it's completely different card information that's being used for the transaction. It just makes it much more difficult for them to get your actual 16-digit credit card or debit card number, whereas you posting it up there on, in their pay portal, where you're typing all the information in and giving it right to whoever's on the other end of the portal.
What do you do? So do we, like, when that happens, is it like call law enforcement, call to the bank, or call to the bank to shut everything down, call law enforcement? What's like the process you have in place, like, that you would want people to follow if they get scammed?
Well, anytime it's with their financial matters with their bank, encourage them to call us first.
Okay.
Um, Not every single one is going to be a scam to the level of, you know, the Russian mob is hacking computers and hacked your information and stole all your money. Some of it's as simple as, like I mentioned earlier, you went to a fast food chain and you handed your debit card through the window and you were talking to your passenger, and unfortunately the person behind the counter there running your card noticed you weren't paying attention, snapped a quick picture of your debit card, and you paid for your food and sent you on.
Right?
Correct. And then they go shopping online. So um, always, if it's something to do with your banking and your financial matters, obviously, go to your financial institution and then report it. Most financial institutions have someone like myself and our team of people, specifically geared towards helping consumers resolve these issues. Extremely unfortunate that not all of them are something the bank can actually help you with. On the other side of that, if when I'm presented with certain uh, scams that come to me, I will instruct consumers. Okay, well, this is what it sounds like your scam was, and I'm going to start rattling off things, and they're going to be like, well, how'd you know that? How'd you know that? I've seen this time and time again. I may instruct them, for your protection, you need to go to the FBI's Internet Crime Portal, ic3.gov, um, to report online crimes. I mentioned earlier, I think they go largely underreported because most people don't go through this step. It is not an instant fix. The FBI is probably not going to jump all over your, online crime, because they are, again, I've been told this by FBI agents, they are chasing much larger fish.
Let's say they're kind of busy, right?
But it does report it. The other piece of it is you can report it. If it's identity theft, the steps to report it to the Federal Trade Commission actually require you to report it to local law enforcement. Okay. And have a police report number. And after that, then you're going to go to ftc.gov, Federal Trade Commission, and they have a online crime complaint line. But if you report it to the Federal Trade Commission and they do manage to, down the road, lock up the criminals that were obviously probably in a much larger scam than what you participated in, but you are a kind of a member of that class action, that victim class. And if they are able to make any recovery, and I've seen the checks come to people before, usually a couple years later, and usually not the full amount they lost, but if they are able to prosecute and have order restitution from them, you may recover something. But it is a long, painful road. It gets underreported because it is such a complex thing to navigate. But I've seen both sides of it. I've seen people lose everything, and I've seen people actually make recoveries. I've actually made recoveries on behalf of consumers that have had, scams perpetrated against them. So it's a little bittersweet. I mean, because you win some, you lose some, and you lose a lot more than you win in this world. And it's particularly heartbreaking sometimes because, like I mentioned earlier, the two largest victim classes are the elderly and the lower income, that are least prepared and capable of taking these losses that unfortunately people suffer.
John Longley is with CCB Community Bank. Thank you so much for being here. And if we have any more questions, where on bankccb.com should we go?
Well, anywhere on the website, you can ultimately get to a link for either our debit and credit card services department. Mainly, you can call into the debit and credit card services department if the fraud is related to your debit or credit card. With online banking, there's an electronic banking link you can go to, or call the bank and ask for the electronic banking department, and we can help you navigate through that. Both of those departments kind of work through me as far as reporting the fraud. They report the fraud up to me, and then I've got to see which approach we take to actually remedy it, if we're going to be able to make a recovery, or instruct the consumer on what they can do to protect themselves going forward.